Wait, what?
What are you doing in my story?
Something bad is going on here.
Yeah, like you're ruining my chance to get published.
No, listen to me. What was that?
Watch where you point those things.
Single-player games are great, but there's something unmatched about adventuring within a brand new video game world alongside a friend. In the modern gaming landscape, I'd argue that it seems no studio understands the impact of a memorable multiplayer adventure like Hazelight Studios. Known for other multiplayer exclusive games like 2018's A Way Out and 2021's It Takes Two, the acclaimed developer is back with yet another crazy adventure for you and a friend to go through. Split Fiction is the story of Mio and Zoe, two aspiring authors who find themselves at the office of Raider Publishing under the impression that they'd each be receiving a publishing deal for the stories that they've written. Suspicions arise, and suddenly, after an altercation, the science fiction future worlds of Mio's clash with Zoe's fantasy settings, knocking Raider's research off course and sending our two protagonists on an adventure unlike anything they've experienced before. They'll have to work together to destroy Raider's machine and stop it from stealing their ideas. As is the case with other Hazelight games, Split Fiction is multiplayer required. No venturing solo here. Luckily, only one person needs to actually purchase the full game, and this time around the online multiplayer is cross-platform, making it even more accessible. My playthrough was done entirely through local multiplayer on the same console, but it's always great to have these multiple options available. At the start of the game, you and your partner will each pick which character you'll be for the story. I played as Mio, and as you play, you encounter different items and objects in the environment that each player can interact with, often requiring you and your friend to work together with your unique abilities and make your way forward. I've always loved this about the Hazelight games, and there's so many moments where I grow envious of the other characters' abilities, but never in a way where I feel like I'm missing out, more just in a way that, hey, I'll try this on my next playthrough, or give me a reason to come back to this game and play differently. The story is everything from humorous to heartfelt to nearly heartbreaking, culminating in an incredible finale. I was quickly drawn to how both of our protagonists feel similar, yet so different. Their chemistry, or lack thereof at first, is one of the most entertaining parts of the game.
Are you for real, Zoe? Like I said, I wrote it when I was a kid.
What sort of devil child were you?
I guess there's no easy way to tell a kid how sausages are made.
That shit was traumatic.
But then imagine how a 7-year-old Zoe took it.
It's an unlikely duo scenario, but Split Fiction pulls it off without ever feeling overdone. I loved watching Zoe and Mio work together throughout each of their equally bizarre fantasies. The overall narrative complements the gameplay very nicely and frequently left me wondering where it could possibly be going next. I loved learning about each of the characters' motivations for wanting to get their work published, and how they explain the backstories for the worlds they've created to each other. It almost made the story feel more down to earth than many other games that I've played. Zoe and Mio hearing each other's struggles helped them grow to trust each other more and move forward. Each chapter of the game is broken up into the main story and side stories that you find within portals in the main story levels. These serve as a nice way to break up the theming or genre of the level you're in, such as short sci-fi sections in the middle of the larger fantasy levels, or sometimes it's a completely different theme altogether. The main levels are pretty lengthy, so finding the side stories within them helps keep the gameplay moving and never felt like a level or side story overstayed its welcome. These side stories change up the abilities you have and the way your character controls to complete the objective, and they're all tons of fun. Some are better than others, but I wouldn't say any of them was particularly bad. Each of the side stories are made up of another one of Zoe and Mio's ideas that aren't necessarily the full level. They usually explain that it's based on a personal experience they've had, and it builds on their motivations further.
I based this idea on a game Ella and I used to play growing up.
Okay.
Up for a little race?
Are you challenging me?
Why? Are you scared?
I love that the game contextualizes these often completely unrelated levels within the main mission. The side stories were such a breath of fresh air and easily my favorite parts of the whole experience. I'm honestly surprised that these are optional, and I recommend that you play them every time you find them. It's definitely where the game shines the most. There's some of the most creative moments that the game has to offer and kept me smiling, whether it was from the presentation or just how fun the gameplay was. And similar to Hazelight's other games, many of the gameplay mechanics here are inspired by a whole variety of video games, so basically there's a ton of different gameplay styles sprinkled throughout this adventure. While most of the game has you platforming and going across different obstacles, it's cool to be able to call out the many references Split Fiction has to other games, and it allowed me to quickly grasp the objective at hand. Whether it's a side-scrolling shooter section that feels like Metroid, or a downhill snowboarding segment like 1080 snowboarding, there are so many moments throughout the adventure where the gameplay feels so familiar and so right. I know I have a lot of experience playing games, but it's cool to be able to quickly grasp the objective at hand just from a few visual cues. And speaking of which, I do want to shout out the overall visuals of Split Fiction, as there were many moments that left me speechless with just how far the developers were able to transform this somewhat realistic art style into a variety of worlds that are just full of detail and begging to be explored. Even if the explorer in me would often go down a path that ended up being for nothing. Really, there are moments where the path kinda splits in two, but one of them is just a really abrupt dead end. Oh well, at least I looked. Another one of my favorite parts about Split Fiction is how there are so many moments where either the gameplay, the writing, or the story had gotten so absurd that I would get totally distracted from my objective simply because I was laughing so hard. One moment you're pigs that can jump high and fart rainbows, and the next your partner's trying to unlock a cell phone to defuse a bomb while you're leading a high-speed motor chase. I seriously can't remember the last time I found myself laughing so hard at a video game, and there's so many instances of this throughout the game.
Oh God, it's everywhere!
But honestly, it's better if you just experience it yourself. I'm not gonna spoil. The controls are tight and easy to understand, so even those who aren't experienced with gaming will still be able to enjoy it. I also appreciate how the game is very forgiving when a player messes up. If one player remains alive, whoever died will respawn whenever it's safe, either automatically or by mashing a button to come back quicker. Split Fiction isn't necessarily difficult, but it does offer a bit of a challenge for even experienced gamers such as myself. There were many moments where it was easy to get lost in the chaos and lose track of my character, but one of us always made sure to do our best to survive and pick up right where we left off. Worst case, if the both of you die, the game is constantly making checkpoints and helping you push ahead, so there's no need to worry about excessive backtracking after a failed attempt here. Even the bosses are generous if you lose, and only restore a little bit of HP when you fail, and not the whole thing, thankfully. The abundance of checkpoints and save points also made it really easy to pick up and play, or stop whenever we had to. These chapters are pretty long, so being able to pretty much quit whenever you want was a really nice feature. And it's always pointing you in the right direction too, so even if you forgot what you were trying to do, the game will try and get you there. And I know I mentioned earlier how the game requires you to play multiplayer, so you better grab someone you get along with. I don't think it'll start overcooked levels of arguments, but if you guys aren't on the same page even for a little bit, there's gonna be some bickering. And I know it sounds cliche, but remember, your chain is only as strong as your weakest link. There are plenty of moments where I ended up ahead of my teammate, or he ended up in front of me, and the game is gonna bring you to a spot where both players need to be present in order to proceed forward. Working together can be a source of friction, but it's all about your cooperation, especially for some later puzzles that require you and your partner to activate a lever or grab onto a ledge at the exact same time. So just remember to count down and communicate in order to succeed.
Listen here, we're breaking out. And if we destroy your machine at the same time, so be it. Yeah, you brought this on yourself.
Split Fiction is some of the most multiplayer fun I've had with any video game in a while. Hazelight Studios hit it out of the park with another phenomenal adventure I'll be thinking about for a while. The story and characters are captivating, the game is incredibly addicting, and I seriously can't recommend this game enough. I'd love to share more of the details with you, but I got to be totally surprised, and I think you should be too. It definitely added to the experience. So grab a friend and set out on this adventure as soon as you can. I promise it's worth it.